The way that I've begun to manage it is number one, I notice when my brain is at its best from a creativity and creation perspective.
Welcome to Digital Dominance. I went from building HTML websites in high school to helping 7- and 8-figure service businesses generate more revenue through better design, SEO, and marketing. On this podcast, I bring you expert tactics and tools to help you turn your online presence into your biggest sales asset. If you want someone on your team to help you navigate the world of digital marketing, head over to FroBro.com. If you're the founder or face of your company, your digital presence isn't just optional, it's your moat. In this episode, I'm joined by Jess Jensen, founder of Copilot Communications and former global market leader at Microsoft, Nestle, and Adidas. Jess now helps executives and business owners stop hiding behind their brand and start showing up like the real, interesting, imperfect humans that they are. We're going to talk about the risks of being invisible online, how you can create a digital presence that reflects your actual voice, and why a polished, ghost-written strategy can sometimes do more harm than good. So whether you're active on social media already or you're just getting started, Jess has a roadmap to building trust and credibility and a community that kind of grows with you. So I'm excited for this conversation. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Definitely. And a lot of people listening probably heard multiple times that you need to have an online presence or personal brand. We've had other episodes on this show where we've talked about personal branding. But I think for a lot of people, it still feels like a foreign or inauthentic thing for them, and you have a line, most executives are invisible online. That's not humility. It's a risk. So I'm curious to hear from you, your thoughts on why you think so many leaders stay quiet when they've heard so many times they need this brand.
Yeah, you teed it up perfectly. It's a great point that there still are a lot of leaders that are either completely invisible or they might be on digital platforms, but they're really just watching, right? They're sort of in the voyeur mode versus the content creator mode. I think that 80-20 rule isn't far from the truth. In fact, even still today in 2025, where 80% of the people are, if they're there, they're watching, and 20% are actually creating. So my recommendation to all the leaders I've worked with and the clients I work with now is that I want us to move into that 20%, and eventually I want that 20% to grow. The idea that not doing anything is sort of either humble or kind of neutral is really an antiquated way of thinking about it. I think it once was the case, but it's not today. Building a personality and a brand, it's not about sort of wanting to be out in front all the time or wanting the airtime when there's maybe not much to say. It's actually, it's doing a couple of things. It's building a personality around you as a leader, and often you're the face of either your division or your company. So you are part of the brand, no question. It's also a way to augment traditional or sort of, brand marketing, which is a lot of my background.
Yeah.
Money will always get poured into media buys and big events and Vegas and, out of home and all those things. And that's great. And I'm not suggesting that we stop doing those things, but you can augment a lot of that with standing up your leaders. Because the reality is that we see 3x engagement with people versus brands. I mean, we inherently attach ourselves and feel like we can trust people over corporations. So it's not an or, it's an and. And so if you think about it from a business perspective, you're really helping open doors for sales conversations, helping recruit future talent, and then also building a little bit of a buffer or an insurance policy if there is a crisis at some point that you have to face and your company maybe needs some positive advocacy out there to its benefit.
So you mentioned, how big brands do branding, right? There's company brands. You work with Microsoft, Nestle, but how building a personal brand is a little different. Obviously, you said there's overlap. You don't necessarily stop some of those things, but can you talk a little bit more about what the difference actually is? Because I've seen some companies, they just pay to have their CEO build his own personal brand, and he happens to be talking about their company while he's there, but that's not necessarily the same thing as the company brand. And so how do you find that line?
Yeah, right. How do you build more of a portfolio approach?
Hmm.
So certainly, I think one of the things that you see a lot of leaders do in the beginning when they're out there online is they become kind of a PR machine. And so, to your point, they're almost duplicating the efforts, which that's a whole separate podcast, but like the corporate effort shouldn't be a PR machine either. But let's just assume that in this situation, they're kind of duplicating by saying, look at this new product launch, look at this amazing customer event. We just expanded into it, 3 new states or whatever the news of the day is. And it's certainly, I don't mean to say that the leader should not be talking about the company or the business. Of course, that's going to be a piece of their narrative platform. But it shouldn't be 100%. It frankly shouldn't even be 70% because that you already have the company handles and voices covering that, right? So again, we don't need to duplicate efforts. We want to augment it. And then B, like I was saying earlier, if we inherently are attracted to people and we want to have relationships with other people, not brands, then we want to know a lot more about that person. We want to know, for example, what kind of leader they are, what kind of culture that they've been trying to build or they hope to build in the future, challenges they faced, or maybe non-linear aspects of their background that then ended up working out well, and here they are today. We want to hear their origin story, and so I always encourage my clients to have a narrative platform, again, kind of, which is a fancy way of just saying what are the themes we're going to talk about on a regular basis and repeat those in different ways and formats. But let's have that platform that, yes, includes the goodness of your company, but at least has 2 or 3 other aspects that speak to who you are as a full 360 person.
Got it. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And I like that the way you approach this is systematic and strategic. And so you're looking at the types of posts that you're doing. You have percentages based on what you're talking about, the company or your personal life or whatever. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of those are kind of guidelines, but I do want to walk through your 5-step framework. So the first step is defining your audience of one. Tell us about that and why that is helpful.
Yeah, and I don't want to take credit for this. That line comes straight from Seth Godin, who, if you're a marketer, you're
Of course. Yeah.
real well versed. Yeah, in his work, and I love him. So this is just simply the idea of before you create any content or you get up on a stage, it doesn't have to even be a digital platform we're talking about. You want to define who your number one audience is. Who are you trying to attract with your message? And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have multiple audiences. Almost all of us do, but we really want to focus in on our most important, our audience of one. And so if you can even build a bit of a persona, right? You can think through how old are they, where do they live, maybe what kind of company do they work for, what do they do on their weekends, like what are their pain points and challenges. Really try to build a personality, and in many cases even write it down so that when you or your team is creating that content, you're really thinking about that kind of person, and you're aiming your tone and voice as well as your actual content themes to what's really meaningful and really going to bring that person closer to you.
Yeah. And you can't really do that if you say we help everyone, right? You already need to be a little bit niched down or focused on who you serve and understand who that is. Otherwise, that person of one is going to be very generic.
Yeah, right. It's that famous saying of differences sell, similarities don't. So if you're trying to attract everybody, you're attracting nobody.
Okay, so then let's talk about step two. That's clarifying what you stand for in just a few sentences, right? How do people even start to do that when they feel like, oh, we do all these things, right? Where do they begin?
Yeah, and this is my favorite part of the work I do with my clients and the work I used to do when I was in house. This is really the beginning of that narrative platform I talked about. And so often, again, there's usually 3-ish pieces, plus or minus. And so this is clearly going to have a component that is about your business, your company, your division. And this can honestly be, this can be a founder, a small business owner, right? I run, a frozen yogurt chain. I have a laundromat. I mean, it doesn't have to be a large Fortune 500. A piece of whatever you're talking about is going to clearly be about what you're excited about regarding your business, right? Your 8 to 5
Mm-hmm.
world. Another piece is often around more culture, right? How you are as a leader, what kind of people that you really enjoy working with, how you build trust with your employees. So culture stuff tends to be a piece of it. And then often there is a piece that is more personal. So again, maybe it's how you grew up or careers you had before this one that have kind of shaped who you are today. How you think about your life outside of work, whether you're a parent, whether you love to travel, right? People really want to see the full you. And I don't mean that you show everything and you talk about every topic. There's clearly some stuff that's personal for each of us that we want to maybe keep private. That's great. But clarifying what you stand for is rooted really in your value system and your priorities. And then we sort of shape that in this kind of, again, portfolio where we go, okay, these things are all both true to you and they accrue to whatever your business goals are.
So I'm curious as we're talking about this. I was thinking, you mentioned people don't. Okay, well, when you're talking to someone, this audience of one, right? What do they care about? Those sort of things. We make some content for that, but that's only a fraction of the strategy, right? So why would they care about you as a person and your interests before they've had you provide value to them, right? So is there a progression to that where you have to provide a lot of value up front before you then start talking about yourself and they'll care? Because if you just talk about yourself all the time at first, nobody's gonna be like, okay, why this guy's not helping me in my business. So I feel like there's got to be a balance in the way you approach this so that, yeah, you've helped them and now they can actually like you as a person too. And that's where the moat begins to form. It's not just helpful content. Okay, yeah, I've heard that before. Helpful content. And it's not just, okay, this guy likes soccer and he reads books and he likes these movies. Like, who is this guy again? So it seems like an interesting mix.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. And I mean, I would use the analogy of an in real life scenario, right? If you go to a party, if you're the person that comes up and just talks about yourself the whole time, it's not going to last very long, right? That conversation is going to end and people are going to walk away. They want you to be interested in them. They want you to bring value in whatever shape that might be that fits your personality. Maybe it's a great story. Maybe it's, top 3 restaurants in the neighborhood that you just learned about. Maybe it's you're funny, right? It's humor. Like you have to definitely deliver that value in the beginning to engender some sort of trust and relationship with them and open the door to rapport. So value is paramount and you will never stop doing that, right? That's going to be woven through forever, but especially in the beginning. And then I think over time you can start to bring in some of your value systems, your beliefs. One of the things I hear from a lot of leaders is this belief in being a servant leader, right? This premise of being a servant leader, and that's got like 7 tenets to it. And so that's a great piece of a narrative platform, right? Like what does it mean to someone to be a servant leader, and how are you shaping a team or growing a company in a slightly different way with a different lens than somebody else might be? So that's both like sharing who you are, but it's also providing value because you're giving other leaders or business owners that are listening or watching ideas of how they can behave as well.
Yeah, it's a one-way relationship almost, or it feels that way because it's not a conversation at first. People might silently watch your stuff for a while before they ever comment or reach out. And so you just kind of have to answer some questions that they might ask, right? And so that goes back to why it's important to know who you're talking to so that you can mix it up and make it feel like it's a more natural thing and not just a forced thing. Like I'm making content because someone told me to, right? Like I'm here to actually help.
Well, and I'll add, I mean, I know a little bit about the world that I think you play in, and I certainly have got experience too. But, when we think about the properties outside of sort of the social media properties or even podcasting, I mean, obviously web is huge, right? Web, search, all the other digital properties that matter so much to a business. That like this narrative platform work, this sort of defining your audience, all of this cascades across those, right? We would not want to show up in that way and this subset of digital and be totally different over here on like a corporate website. And so to me, this is fundamental work that it might start in the social space in the beginning. And then as that person gets more comfortable, and again, the brand is aligned with the leader, then we want to we want to make sure that that's really a through line that's hitting all the digital properties. So there's consistency.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we're kind of nudging up to step 3 now, which is about creating content. So can you give us some examples of how to do that well?
Yeah, I mean, this is where you start to kind of sharpen your sword, right? So you've decided who I'm talking to, you've decided what I want to stand for and kind of the topic areas or editorial themes. And then you need to start creating things. And again, in the beginning and still today, I am such a believer in like get it 85-90% of the way there and ship it, right? It's never going to be perfect. And there's so many people I talk to. I'm in these LinkedIn audits right now, which has really been interesting because I hear a lot of the same things again and again with all different kinds of people in all different parts of the country. And there is a definite fear of, I don't know what to say. I don't look right. What if I make a fool of myself? Especially when you get into things like video, which feels like the bar is higher.
Yeah.
Um, and so in number 3, it's really, hey, let's pick 1 or 2 formats that do feel comfortable to you, right? Maybe that's just copy and still imagery for now. That's okay. That's great. Let's do that. And maybe we'll evolve eventually to like podcasting or video, what have you. And let's start to put stuff out. But again, always with the filter of, is this my voice? Is this how I would talk if I was in a conversation with somebody at a party or in a meeting? Is this an image that I'm proud of that feels, natural and appropriate to what I'm talking about? Like, continue to really bring your human self into that content because again, especially in the era that I'm sure you and your listeners are well aware, like it is such a cacophony of mediocrity right now.
Yeah.
And it's just so easy to create a bunch of stuff that doesn't actually really represent you or feel like you. And so that would be the filter I would encourage. And that third step is do a pause and say, is this sound and look like me?
Yeah. And again, this is, I think, a really tricky thing for a lot of people because, yes, it's easy to create content. You could even tweak the content that ChatGPT generates to make it sound more like you. But then periodically creating stuff that is just you, like the more personal side that's not related to business, it feels like there's such a disconnect mentally there that I think it's really hard to do that. And because you don't know, like, okay, yes, I've been posting about websites and SEO and stuff. And now I just posted a music video about LinkedIn because it was fun and interesting. Totally unrelated. It's like, okay, are people going to think I'm less professional because of that? Or should I just go for it because I thought it was fun, right? So I think that's such a hard thing to figure out.
Right. So 2 things on that. Number 1, I watched your LinkedIn music video and I loved it.
Thank you.
So well done. I loved your collaborator too. The other guy that was on screen is great. I love that you did that. And this is a great example. Like when I was doing my research before this interview, I was more excited to come talk to you after watching that LinkedIn music video, right?
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, it softened you. It made you human. It made you real to me. And I really enjoyed seeing that part. I mean, the other stuff that you've done is great too, but like this was a little less expected. And so it gave me a sense of your personality, which was lovely. So you just literally, you exemplified what we're talking about with why I do that. But 2, to your point of like, it can feel kind of jarring to sort of be jumping back and forth. That's, I think, why we need to do this strategy work up front, why we want to lay down on paper, so to speak, this sort of narrative platform, this sort of editorial plan, because we're up front saying, okay, here's the blueprint. I'm going to talk about this, this, and this. I'm roughly going to do it at this cadence. I'm probably going to focus on this platform. And, I'm going to try to, over the course of 90 days, optimize based on what I see being the most successful. You have a blueprint so that you're not feeling like it's random or ad hoc. You're really just, you're working your plan that you built in the very beginning. And then you're occasionally kind of fine tuning and iterating based on the feedback that you get.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you don't have the strategy, you might create stuff that gets impressions or even comments, reactions, but not necessarily clients and people that are wanting to reach out. And obviously some things are just going to be for fun, like a music video and get impressions, but that exposes you to more people who then see your other content, which might be related to a website. And then, okay, suddenly I'm interested because they have this sort of connection that you've created.
Yes. Well said.
So you recommend starting on LinkedIn if people aren't sure where to start. Is that correct?
I do for the work and the clients that I tend to partner with. Sorry, my audience of one, if you will.
Hmm.
I mean, I love a lot of the social properties for different reasons. But what's been interesting, I was just reading an article about this yesterday. What's been interesting is I have sort of instinctively felt over the last 3 years that LinkedIn has evolved, right?
Hmm.
It's really moved from that, like, it's a
A
digital
lot.
resume. I go there twice a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure you felt that too. And now you feel like there's thought leadership, there's interactivity. It feels like a more of a community than it used to. Even silly stuff like video. They were the last social platform to even allow video, and
Yeah.
finally that came on board. That changed the game. So I have really enjoyed watching it kind of grow up, if you will. And I love that it's far more than digital resume. It's far more interesting to me. But the other thing that I was reading about yesterday that I didn't put two and two together, but it really resonated with me is I think besides LinkedIn itself kind of reinventing and evolving, when Twitter became X and there was a bit of an exodus for a lot of people, maybe still has an account, but maybe just doesn't spend as much time as they
Yeah.
used to, right? The tech industry has always been kind of a lion's share, right? The journalism and the tech industry have been kind of the two lion's share verticals, really, that kind of dominated a lot of the conversation on Twitter/X. And I think when a lot of them migrated, where they migrated to was LinkedIn.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I think a lot of the kinds of dialogue that we might have been having 7 or 8 years ago, and the platforms work differently, of course, but generally speaking, I think those are happening more and more on LinkedIn. And the lovely part, at least in the network the pool that I swim in, is that in general, LinkedIn is a bit of a kinder, gentler atmosphere. There's a little less drama there. And I also love that too. So for all the reasons, if a lot of my clients tend to kind of find themselves in either like I'm a small business owner, founder, or I'm a leader in the tech industry, both of those groups make a ton of sense on LinkedIn for the reasons I just explained. And also, if it's a little bit of just a more professional, kinder atmosphere, that also feels like another reason to spend time. So I don't mean to say that digital equals LinkedIn and there's nothing else. Of course, there's a lot of other spaces, but often my clients tend to want to start in LinkedIn and kind of get that dialed and figured out. And then again, in this step 4, let's master that if that's your primary platform for your
Hmm.
business. And then we can kind of, again, cascade that out to whether it's podcasting, Instagram, web, wherever else is important for you.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, and I think a lot of it has to do with the reputation that that platform has. So if you were to say, "Let's start on TikTok," and they're like, "I don't like, isn't that the dancing platform?" And like, I'm a professional, but at least LinkedIn has the professional background for networking and everything, and so
Mm-hmm.
professionals can feel a little more comfortable starting there, even though the door has now opened to video and some of these other types of content that people are now posting.
Totally.
So let's talk about engagement too, because you've mentioned relationships are built in the comments. What does that? What does engagement look like when it's done right? Because obviously people hit the AI comment button sometimes, like that's great, totally agree, but we want to go beyond that, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, like, sometimes we're all in a hurry and like you just hit the like button and call it a day. Um, that last step is really a reminder that relationships are built in the comments. And again, I want to give credit. I think Gary Vee said something very similar. Creative is in the comments, and that kind of inspired this. So I certainly didn't originate this from scratch, but I've seen it to be true in my own experience as well. I'll give you an example. One of the marketing leaders that I follow and really enjoy is Frank Cooper, who is the CMO of Visa.
Okay.
And I mean, I have a Visa card. I don't have any, I don't really have a lot of feelings pro or con around Visa, like all good. But when he started publishing, and I don't know how, somehow it ended up on my feed, I started paying more attention because he would write these sort of long stories, these narratives about his background. He's got this really wild diversity of things he's done before he was ever at Visa, worked for Def Jam Records and Pepsi, all kinds of stuff. He's interviewed, LL Cool J. Like he just has this really diverse, interesting story to tell. And so I've commented a couple times on his posts, and last month he responded. And he responded with a couple sentences. And of course, right away, I'm like, this is so great. I love this. I'm sure it's your team, but thank you anyway. And he wrote back again. He's like, actually, it's me. And I have no reason not to believe it isn't him.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, like, the feeling that it gave me of like, here's someone who I look up to, who, right, is at that level at a company that, is well regarded, gigantic, globally well known, all those things. He's doing stuff I really admire. And for him to reply with a few sentences, not just a like, to what I said, made me feel seen, like he's watching, he's there. He wants to be part of the conversation. So I just really encourage the clients I work with to, yes, publish, of course. I want you to be a content creator, but go in there, respond certainly to people that comment on your stuff. No question about that. And respond within, 24, 48 hours, right? Keep the conversation alive, but also be generous, show up and go into your feed, your home, and go on to other people's posts and make comments and ask questions and give them love. Because if we want it to actually be a community, what social media once was 15 years ago, right? The whole idea behind it, then we have to interact with each other. We have to actually have conversations. So I think from a sales perspective, it's actually even more of an opportunity. I mean, yes, you can build relationship if you're a marketer, which is great. But if you're someone who's actually trying to drive business development and actually build relationships that could be a part of a pipeline for you, which again, I think of the founders and small business owners that are listening, those comments are gold. If somebody comments on something that I did, I absolutely should respond. And I probably should even go over to DMs and just say, hey, thanks. Thanks for being there. Thanks for noticing what I did. I'm not going to try to hard sell them, but I'm going to show that I noticed it. And I'm going to open the door to a little bit of a dialogue. And who knows what that could turn into down the road.
Yeah, well, that's being the human, right? Taking the next step to make the conversation two-way, especially go into the DMs, or even if you stay in the comments. Now you can get their perspective and feedback, and it feels a lot more natural. So I think that's a great reminder. One last thing before we wrap up I want to touch on is, a lot of people might be hearing this and they're like, I don't have time to make all these videos and spend time commenting and things. I'm really busy running my business. But obviously, like your example of the CMO at Visa, he's making time for this. It's clearly there's a reason for it. And so do you have any guidelines for how much time someone would need to set aside to kind of do this well, where it's not just the AI copy paste, but actually doing something thoughtful?
Yeah. I struggle with this too, right? I'm running a business, and sometimes the last thing I want to do is come up with my own content, right? It's the whole, like, you put yourself at the bottom of that list. The way that I've begun to manage it is, number one, I notice when my brain is at its best from a creativity and creation perspective. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's in the mornings. Some people could be late at night. Right? So pick an hour and a half or whatever in a day part that is where you're feeling like the flow. And then for me, what I try to do is I try to batch it. So I use like Friday mornings, for example, from like maybe 9 to 10:30. I've also noticed like things for me, at least in my world, are quieter on Mondays and Fridays, and they're real busy in the middle of the week. So I've kind of learned to kind of create a schedule where, okay, Friday mornings, I'm going to create maybe 3 posts. I batch them.
Yeah.
I might even schedule them. If I don't know how to do that, that's fine. I'll just hold on to them, and then I can just do them one by one, wherever you're at, all good. And then throughout the week, I'll go in there and I'll take a look and see what's going on and respond and engage. But I don't spread out the creation throughout the week, because it becomes too daunting and it just gets lost. So those would be my recommendations: is know when you're at your most creative, try to batch a couple things together, and then you can kind of schedule them out, and then you can just touch base to sort of see what's happening with your community, but you're not having to think about coming up with something from scratch in the moment.
Yeah. Because otherwise too much pressure. You got to relieve that pressure so you can be creative and get ahead of it a little bit. So I appreciate you walking through your framework and all these steps. There's obviously more to it. You can go a lot deeper. But this is so important. I agree. LinkedIn is also a great place for it, as they've been making changes to try and make this a better place that works for business owners to share content that's helpful and actually make important business development connections. So if you guys are listening, please do this, right? You've heard us say it enough times. Work on your personal brand. Set aside the time to create this content. Don't just pump out the AI generated stuff. Put some thought behind it. So if you guys are listening and you want a fresh set of eyes on your LinkedIn profile, I don't know, maybe you haven't touched it in 5 years, you probably got some things to fix. Jess is going to be doing some free audits this month. So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So if you're a listener of the show, I'd love to just pay it forward a bit. So if you go to copilotcommunications.com, that's my website, you go into contact, you'll see there's a place you can schedule time with me. And so when you book that time, just mention that you were a listener of Digital Dominance, and I'll give you half an hour of my time. I'll take a look at your LinkedIn and give you some actionable next steps, and hopefully get you feeling a little better about your presence.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. That's really helpful. Guys, do that. If you need help, not sure where to go, this can kind of help jumpstart you a little bit. And if this episode gave you something to think about, please take a few seconds, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. This helps more service business owners learn how to build their online presence in a practical and meaningful way. And if you know someone who would benefit from listening to this, please just share the episode with them. Send them the link. But thanks again, Jess. Thanks to all of you guys for listening. That's it for today. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Digital Dominance. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a big favor and leave a review? It really helps more service business owners discover the show, fix their websites, and grow their businesses the right way.